Hello, everybody. How's it going? And welcome to a different video. I've been doing a lot of live action videos, pick up stuff, talking about random things with games and whatnot. And I'm working on kind of a little bit of a longer video, maybe, so that could be kind of cool. But I wanted to come back to this, the tier listing stuff. I did one on Nintendo consoles, and I actually found it quite enjoyable. It was a lot of fun to kind of go through and nostalgically something, I don't know. Nostalgically look at the past and rank those consoles and stuff. And it was a lot of fun, and I know the tier list thing is a total fad, and I don't really care because it was fun to kind of look at them and talk about them and go through them. So this time we're going to look at, instead of consoles, controllers. And this is all controllers, or at least for available for all systems. I might do maybe like an obscure console tier list at some point or something, like some of the weirder consoles out there, like TurboGrafx and like the Amiga, some of the Pong consoles that were actually consoles, like the RCA Studio and stuff like that. Maybe we'll look at stuff like that, perhaps, maybe sometime. You can always leave a comment too, if there's a certain thing you want me to tier up and talk about as far as gaming goes. Maybe it's a certain genre of games, maybe it's a certain company's games, I don't know, whatever. Peripherals, I don't know. Leave a comment if there's something you want me to tier list, and that would be awesome. So, but we're going to look at the wonderful world of controllers. Now, controllers are good, bad, ugly, work well, don't work well, and there's a lot of them throughout history, but these are the mainline console stuff throughout the ages, so we're going to take a look at them, just what's in here, and we will go, maybe we'll do like another one with more, and fight it out with the best ones, I don't know. We're just going to look at this one. This is a pre-made one on tier list website, so I'll take a look. So the first one we have is the newest Nintendo console, which is the Switch. Now, I personally, the straight-up Joy-Cons am not a fan of. I really, really dislike them. I think that it went in the opposite direction of the Wii U as far as functionality and stuff goes, and I find them way too small, way too, for my big hands. I find them a little fragile, too. I don't really know how well they actually take up, because I own a Switch Lite, which my wife uses more than I do by a long shot, because I don't really need another home console attached to my television. And the Switch Lite does fine, because the only thing I can't really play is, like, Mario Party, the new Mario Party, which, whatever. I'll play it at my friend Jake's house if I really want to play Mario Party. Whatever. So, yeah, I find them small, too difficult to kind of use individually or together. And I'm just not a fan of motion controls that don't use VR or aren't just like a camera capturing my movement. Like, in theory, PlayStation Camera and the Kinect were the better ways to go, I think, than motion controls through the Wii and the Switch. So I have to give this a D tier, unfortunately. I really, really dislike them, which is unfortunate, but, you know. Next up, we come into Microsoft's territory, the Xbox 360 controller. Personally, actually, I really like the Xbox 360 controller. I think it is fairly well designed. Button placement is quite good, and if you have big hands, it's big enough for those big hands. I never had an issue with the 360 controllers. They do have the problem that the rechargeable batteries were generally really bad. They died quickly. I recommend getting like rechargeable AA's and stuff if you want to do rechargeables instead of buying AA's all the time. They did chew through AA's quite quickly as well. Even if you bought like Energizer or Duracell, they did chew through them very fast. If you didn't buy bulk batteries, you were buying them like at least once a week for like an 8 or 16 pack. So that's kind of a downfall. They're fairly durable, but the stick drift can be quite bad on them. The D-pad as well can also kind of go on them. and the buttons get sticky very easily. But overall, I do have to say the 360 controller is a decent controller. Wireless connectivity was great. The ability to plug it into the console as well was great. Plugging your headsets and stuff in them was cool. The chat pads and stuff you could get with them was also really good. So yeah, I'm going to give that one a solid B tier, right kind of in the middle. Then we move into older Xbox. Now, there's two versions of the Xbox original controllers on here. This is the bigger one. This is the Duke controller, the famous Duke controller. I want to point out that the Duke controllers, if you had a good enough, if it was like newer and the cable on it was very strong, you could swing this thing around like a fucking slingshot kind of thing and kill somebody with it. It was hefty as hell. These things don't break. Like, you could beat the shit out of this thing, throw it at walls, put it through TVs, and it would still work fine. Maybe there's a little scuff on it, but it would still work really, really good. So, durability, 10 out of 10 for the Dukes. The Dukes just never died. The only thing is that, like, the 360 slimlines them a little bit, and so does the newer one that we're going to look at, the S-Type, later on. Also perfected it better as far as size goes. So it's a little bit too bulky. It's wings, I guess you could call them, that come down to hold on to and stuff. They are a little too short. The belly of it underneath is a little too large to be able to hold on to it properly, I find. So for that reason, I'm going to have to put it as well for a B tier, because while the durability is definitely there, and I can trust a Duke, no matter if it's third party or not, to work, it is a little bit too cumbersome for its own good. Super Nintendo. Pretty decent controller, actually. Super Nintendos are really, really great. They're a smaller size, but I still find them fine because you're not using sticks. You're just using a D-pad and buttons, so that's fine for it to be a little bit smaller in the hand. Again, also very durable, just like the Dukes. They're easy to beat up and around. There's a lot of third-party ones that were released back in the day by like Interact and stuff like that that still work, which is testament to the quality of these types of controllers and their third-party counterparts of back in the day. So Super Nintendo as well kind of introduced gaming to me. It was my first system I did ever own. Some of the first games I played, Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, Link to the Past, Super Mario World is still my favorite Mario. Games like those. Castlevania. Castlevania for the Super Nintendo is such a good game. We'll have to talk about that sometime. But Super Nintendo controller pulls them all through, has enough buttons to be able to play those more complex games, especially when you get into stuff like Castlevania and RPGs, like Final Fantasy and stuff of that day. They needed more buttons than just the two that the NES had, and the Super Nintendo delivered actually quite well with a very responsive controller. Solid A-tier controller from them. PlayStation 4. I don't actually own a PlayStation 4, but I have played it, so I have held the controllers. Sony has always had an issue with their controller size for me. I always find them a little bit too small. When you get into joystick land, you need to have decent spacing. And I find the PlayStation controllers, the DualShocks, no matter what generation of DualShock, just was a little too small, a little too close together for me, as well as placement. I prefer the Xbox's placement of one high, one low, than I do the PlayStation's two thumbsticks, because that's where you're supposed to use them, is as thumbs. However, with Xbox, if I hold an Xbox controller, which I have one here, a nice Halo controller, the thumb placement just feels better to me than what you're going to find in the PlayStation controller, where it's kind of all central. The left thumb for me just feels a little weird. And I don't know if that's just because I played a lot of Xbox or what, but it's just not my thing. I'm going to put it C tier. Also, you have to recharge the batteries on them, which is a pain in the ass. I prefer the option more so with the 360 controller and Xbox One than I do being forced. Because when you're forced, eventually those batteries internally are going to die, and they're a bitch to replace. They're not easy to replace. You have to take apart the whole controller or just buy a new one. That's plagued Sony through the PS3 and PS4 era. Less so the PS4 because the controllers haven't been able to age themselves too much, but the PS3 definitely. When I get used controllers for the PS3, about 4 to 10 times, I have to replace the battery. And that's a problem, and that will be a problem going forward with the PS4's lifespan later on in its life, and as the PS3 continues to age. So that's kind of a problem. Next, it looks like it's the Saturn Controller, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. This is a controller I actually haven't had much chance to play around with. I have held one and played a few quick games on the Saturn, but Sega was never my console, and the Saturns are rare enough as is, so it's not something I've really gotten too much familiar with. I'm going to put it a B tier, just because what I have played with it was good, but I don't think I have enough experience to either put it higher or rank it lower. So B, solid middle tier. People can disagree with me all they want there. Sega Genesis, though, I have had lots of experience with. Altered Beast, the Castlevania on Genesis, Sonic games, of course. What the hell is this stupid game? Oh my god, I'm gonna go crazy here. Gunstar Heroes, that's it. Yes, played a lot of Gunstar Heroes and stuff like that. Also, sports titles, I don't know what it was. I just preferred the Genesis for sports over the Super Nintendo or the N64. So, there's that. The controller is actually designed quite well. It's kind of a horseshoe C shape, but very thick. The only thing I don't like about it is even the official controllers. We're not even talking third party. The official controllers feel very cheap. They have a very cheap plastic feel to it, like they were produced in China for mass production over their Super Nintendo counterparts or N64 counterparts or NES counterparts, whichever you want to compare it to. They do feel quite cheap, and they do break quite easily. I also find the cables are a little bit less quality as well than their Nintendo counterparts. So for that reason, I can't rank it as high as the Super Nintendo. We're going to have to go S tier, or B tier, sorry. I know, there's a lot of B tier stuff. It's okay. The Wii U. Personally, I think the Wii U pad is an underrated gem. And I absolutely love the Wii U and its concept. Now, Nintendo executed it very, very poorly until later on in its lifespan with games like Mario Maker. However, the thought was there. And with what they wanted to do with it, or at least what I thought they wanted to do with it, it would have been a knockout console. It had the console aspect, and then it had the portability aspect as well, because you could turn off the main console and play your game on the pad, and the pad itself was its own portable controller. No, you couldn't take it far away from the system, but, like with the Switch, but it was still a great family console in that aspect, because it was backwards compatible with Wii controllers. You could have the Gamecube adapter as well with it to play with the Gamecube controllers, and have multiple, multiplayer games with people playing whatever controller they want. That, to me, is a good console experience. What really ties down the Wii U was its library, because they didn't really open it up to third party like they currently are with the Switch, or like they did in the past with, like, say, the Super Nintendo. That's really not on the controller, though. The battery life was generally really good. The cord that came with it was like 50 million feet long, so you could pretty much just walk around with the damn thing in your living room with the cord plugged in and not really have to worry about it. I'm pretty sure the same cord was used for the one of the DS models. I don't know if it was 3DS or not, but if I remember right, it fit one of the DS models. But anyway, and the controller itself was really good. The touchpad was responsive. The controller itself, button layout was generally fairly good. It was a good size. I have to give this one a solid A tier with the Super Nintendo controller. I actually really liked the Wii U gamepad. And a lot of people are going to hate me for that, and that's fine. I've kind of already given my 2 cents about the DualShock. The DualShock 1 kind of pisses me off a little bit more than the DualShock 2, 3s, and 4s, and 6-axis and stuff, just because it was a stupid timeline for it. The PS1 was a weird system, because a lot of people don't realize that the PS1 originally did not have joystick controllers. They had straight-up controllers. You can see it a little long on this list. In fact, it's not next, but the one after. That was the original release, and I believe it was like 3 or 4 years before we got joystick controllers. And it was an innovation for its time. However, PlayStation was just very, very late on the draw. However, because of that innovation that they really kind of threw out there, and the DualShock smoothness and the intelligence of them to actually do that, I will at least give it a B tier over top of PlayStation 4, because again, it's corded, so I don't have to worry about the battery, and that's kind of what gives it the edge. Plus, revolutionary for its time, whereas PlayStation 4, not so much. It's not broke, don't fix it, but it's a little broke. You need to fix a little bit. The Switch Pro Controller. The Switch is a great console. The Joy-Cons are terrible controllers. And the Pro controllers are good controllers, but they are overpriced. I'm not paying $100 Canadian for a controller. That is insane. Like, absolutely. I think PlayStation and Xbox One controllers are already expensive at $80 new, or higher if they're special edition. But $100 for a controller is ridiculously insane. Controllers, in my personal opinion, should be valued in around the $60 to $65 range. With higher, of course, for special editions, that's totally fine. They're collectibles, they'll gain value. But for your add-on controller for a console to be that expensive, even the Joy-Cons are about that price. I think they actually are $100. Is kind of ridiculous. No matter how good the controller feels, and no matter how much it imitates the Xbox controller, I am giving it a D tier just because of price. It shouldn't be that expensive, and it's ridiculous that it is. PlayStation 1. This is the original controller that came with the system when it was released. So again, a lot of people don't really know that this is the controller that came with the PS1 systems. This was the one that packaged with the original packaging of the console. They re-released the console once they came out with DualShock packaging, but the original console came with this controller. This controller wasn't super innovative. It felt okay in the hands. The size, because there isn't any joysticks, is actually not bad, and the fact that it has kind of the grips, the wings I like to call them, is actually quite good. Now keep in mind it competed with the N64, as well as the Sega Saturn at that time as well, kind of, sort of, not really. And the N64's controller is kind of So for the era, it was probably the best controller, and I have to give it a solid A tier actually for that. It was a good controller overall. PlayStation 2's DualShock. B tier for the same reasons as the PS1 controller. There was innovations there. The controllers feel better. The joysticks and stuff are smoother. B tier. The Gamecube Controller. This is the ultimate fighting controller, especially in games like Smash Bros, of course. This controller is laid out amazingly. The buttons are beautifully put out there. The controller design and hold is just super nice. All the buttons are responsive. The joystick is in a great position. The other joystick you don't use as much, also in a decent position, along with the D-pad. The buttons are laid out super nice so that your A button is the central, and your thumb can move out to the other buttons. The R and L triggers and stuff are pushed out and in, so they coincide with each other really, really nicely. The cord was generally long. It was also a really good cord. The controllers could literally take the beating of a lifetime, and in some cases outdo the Duke. This controller is a god, and it is our first S tier. Beautiful controller. The NES. The NES is where it all began. You got a D-pad, start, select, A, and B. And you know what? That's really all the NES kind of needed. So, yeah. The size of the controller was a little too small, even though it is only a D-pad and 2 buttons. It is still very small. It does feel fairly tough, though, for being just literally a rectangle of plastic. And it is generally quite responsive, and they can take quite a beating. So I'm going to give that an A tier. Good job, NES. The N64 controller. I really don't know what the hell Nintendo was smoking when they decided to design the N64 controller like this, but whoever it was should definitely be fired because it is an absolute nightmare. I bought a Hori controller for my N64 that's set up more in the style of the Xbox controller and the Pro controllers, which works eons better. And there's a reason why games on the N64 that are remastered are generally better remasters, because the controls are better. They're more fluid, they're on better systems with better controllers, and just feel a lot better. The N64 controller was an anomaly of just epic failure proportions, and I just really, really don't like it. The stick as well has the highest failure rate of any of these sticks. Like, any joystick controller does not come anywhere close to the failure rate of the N64. There's a reason why when people sell N64 controllers, especially to collectors and in gaming groups, they put condition of the joystick's tightness. They don't do that for any other controller unless there's an issue with the actual joystick drifting or something. And in which case, generally, they just don't sell it or they replace it. N64 controllers are the only ones that I ever see anybody rate that on right off the bat without being asked. For that reason, Nintendo gets another D-tier controller. Honestly hated it. Dreamcast. Bulky, very Duke-like in its design, and he stuffed the memory card right into the controller, which I'm not a huge fan of because it means the cord is on the inside instead of the outside. This causes a lot of issues with the controller, with the cord getting caught on stuff, with it just being annoying, as well as breakage near the base of the controller itself, like the base of the cord on the controller. Not a great designed controller for cable. The layout of buttons and stuff is fairly good, and the size and weight and feel is decent, but that cord was just such a bad decision that I have to put it C tier. Wiimote. I've discussed my distaste of motion controlling. Skyward Sword as a game was great, but the motion controls is what killed it for me and why I will never replay it now that I've beaten it, until they decide to release a remaster that doesn't that can do Pro Controller compatibility with the Switch or something like that. D tier. Fuck that controller. PlayStation 3. I'm putting it C tier. I've kind of already talked about it. Battery life is a huge one because of the rechargeable battery life as well as size. They are kind of fragile as well as far as modern controllers go. They break a lot easier than the Xbox ones do. So for that reason, I have to give it a C tier. Now, the original Xbox S-type controller. So we had the Duke, which was a little too bulky, and then they slimmed it down. And when they slimmed it down, they made a better controller, in my opinion. The Duke is legendary in its size and just ability to kill somebody, but the S-type controller is what you pick up if you really want to play something on Xbox. It has that 360 style to it, just not as slimlined and refined, but it has a good feel and layout. It's not too bulky without being too small. Definitely A tier. Our final controller is the Xbox One. It does have better battery lasting life than the 360 controller, I will give it that. I do use AA's with it fairly often. It is harder to get rechargeable battery packs for it, I find. I don't know why that is, but it just is. And they're more expensive when you do find them than the 360s ever were. It's a decent controller layout-wise. It's really just the 360 controller, but kind of grown up. It is a good controller overall. I do prefer playing the 360 controllers and stuff when I play PC and whatnot, and the Xbox One is no stranger to that. The Xbox One will probably replace my current Xbox 360 PC controller once that controller bites the dust. So, decent controller, a lot of great initiatives and stuff on that controller. Some cool special editions too. A lot of neat ones like the Overwatch, like the UNSC, Halo one, the new Gears one and stuff. There's a lot of cool special edition ones out there. Sea of Thieves also was a cool one. A lot of neat special editions. But overall, decent controller. We're going to go A tier. So that's it. That's my ranking of at least these controllers. What would you like to see me rank next? Let me know. Leave a comment down below and I will get it together and rank it for you if you really want. And yeah, I will see you all next time. Peace.